I've learned that silence has a weight. It doesn't float, doesn't drift. It settles in your back, your ankles, the small places no one checks until they swell. The porch light was off again. I didn't fumble with the key this time. I'd memorized where the chipped paint met the edge of the lock. I turned it once quietly. The door gave. Inside, the laughter was loud enough to echo. Not my kind, game show laughter, studio laughter. Kendra's voice clipped through it like a knife. She was saying something about the frosting being too sweet, too commercial. Then Travis, deeper, slower. It's what the kids like now. No one turned. I stood just long enough to know I wasn't missed. Then moved through the hallway where my shoes used to be now. Tyler's sneakers and Ellie's dance flats were scattered like leaves. I picked one up and placed it beside the others. Pointless, but old habits don't need permission. The fridge was humming louder than usual. I opened it, half expecting something. I don't know what, a note, maybe a plate covered in foil. There was neither. Just a frosted chocolate cake already half gone, and a bottle of white grape soda labeled with Ellie's name. Above it, a menu printed in cheerful font, taped with a butterfly magnet. Ellie's birthday dinner, family only. Please RSVP to Kendra. There was a signature at the bottom with love, Aunt Kendra and Uncle Travis. The font was pink. I stared at it like it might explain something. On the counter there was a stack of napkins with gold foil trim and paper cups that still had their plastic sleeves. Someone had set them up neatly. Someone had expected a gathering. I hadn't been home when it happened. I had been wearing a red visor and a shirt with oil stains that never quite washed out, folding boxes, bagging biscuits, dipping chicken with hands that ached by the hour. One of the teenagers had asked if I ever took breaks. I told him I used to. That seemed to confuse him. I reached for a cup of water. There was lipstick on one of them, pale coral, the kind Kendra wore on days she needed to look presentable. I turned on the faucet and let it run. In my purse, beneath the reduced-price loaf of bread and a bottle of aspirin, was my dinner, a chicken leg I hadn't sold wrapped in 2 napkins and a receipt. Beside it, a small tub of coleslaw, half spilled. I'd carried it like it mattered. I didn't eat. I wasn't hungry anymore. I passed by the dining room. Not that it's a dining room now. They use it for storage. Boxes gift wrap a small desk Ellie never sits at. My bed is just beyond the curtain divider folded. I didn't unfold it yet, just sat on the edge of the bench, looking at the small list I'd tucked between the wall and my mirror. Water bill, gas, Wi-Fi, electric, all still in my name. Someone had written "due" beside one of them in green pen, Kendra's handwriting. She liked to organize things. There used to be a photo here taped above the list. Me holding Ellie in a blue knit blanket I'd made for her birth. It's not there anymore. I ran my thumb over the strip of faded tape. I tried to remember if anyone had said my name when I came in. Not Mom. Not Grandma. Just my name. Mildred, even that. Nothing came to mind. I unwrapped the chicken not to eat, just to check if it had leaked. The napkin was stained orange. I threw it away and wiped my hands on my apron before taking it off. I hung it over the folding chair in the corner beside my house slippers. One had a tear. I'd been meaning to sew it. My knees cracked as I stood. I turned off the hall light. Someone had left a fork in the sink. It wasn't mine. I left it there. Ellie's laughter rang out again, high and bright. It made something in me feel very still. Not bitter, not broken, just still. I picked up the mail from the hallway table, one envelope, addressed to resident. Junk. I held it a while anyway, just for the weight. Travis once told me back when they first moved in that this would be temporary, a few months, just until things settled. Kendra was pregnant then. She'd worn a mustard yellow cardigan and wouldn't take off her shoes. Said the floor felt sticky. I had made spaghetti that night. She didn't eat much. Said it needed more depth. Travis kissed my cheek and said, "We'll clean up later, Mom." Later never came. Now they host parties, make lists, use the word family like it belongs to them. I reached for the remote that used to sit near my side table. It wasn't there anymore. I didn't feel like watching anything anyway. I sat back on the cot, still folded, still narrow, pulled the blanket across my lap, and rested my hand over my knee where the ache never quite goes away. A string on my sleeve had come loose. I tucked it in. I looked around that narrow space they left me, not in cruelty, not in violence, but in assumption. And I thought, I can't remember the last time anyone called me mother in this house. I used to believe that small things could hold a family together, fresh towels, full cabinets, dinners that started on time. I don't believe that anymore. When Travis called that morning, I was folding a sheet that had gone thin at the corners. His voice had that soft edge he used as a buffer like sugar over a bruise. He didn't explain much, only that Kendra's hours had been cut, and the baby was coming sooner than planned. "We just need a little space to land," he said. I told him I'd clear the back room. I remember kneeling on the rug that afternoon, packing my photo albums and Russell's old records into cardboard boxes, one by one, careful not to bend the sleeves. I moved the sewing machine into the coat closet. The curtains were dusted. I tightened the shower handle in the guest bath with a wrench I hadn't touched in years. Nothing felt like too much. They were my people. Kendra came with a suitcase that had a broken wheel and a prescription bag. Travis carried a fan, a router, and a container labeled snacks. No one mentioned the due date. They just stepped over the welcome mat and never stepped back. In the beginning, I said yes before they even asked. Yes to switching bedrooms. Yes to packing away my books. Yes to unplugging the TV in the kitchen because screens distract the kids. I stopped playing the morning news while making coffee. Kendra said the voices made her anxious. "Everything feels louder when you're pregnant," she added. I switched to reading the paper in silence. Eventually, I stopped picking it up at all. When Ellie had her first week of kindergarten, I slipped a card into her backpack with a sticker sheet and a note. "Be kind. Learn gently." Kendra pulled it out at breakfast, turned it over like it might contain a threat, and slid it across the table. "We don't want to confuse her with too many messages." I didn't write another. They started using my phone number on school forms. I began getting calls about missed lunches, early pickups, report cards. I filled the gaps before anyone asked. It was easier than handing over the responsibility just to have it fall. When Ellie had a fever, I set my alarm for every 2 hours and kept a wet cloth at her hairline. Kendra stayed in the other room with the blinds drawn. "I need my immune system strong for the baby," she said. "It's not selfish, it's survival." I didn't argue. I just brought her a glass of water and closed the door quietly behind me. There were grocery lists, then new lists taped to the fridge with items underlined in bright marker almond milk, dye-free toothpaste, organic apples, flaxseed. I never bought flaxseed before. I had to Google it. I skipped the arthritis balm to make room for it in the budget. Travis didn't notice. He held out his hand at the end of the week and I placed bills into it like a reflex. When the gas bill went up, I lowered the thermostat in my room. No one noticed that either. I returned to work at Rooster's Shack 6 months after Tyler was born. I didn't tell them. I packed my uniform in a tote and changed in the restroom. The manager didn't blink when I said I'd take nights. Teenagers took day shifts. Older hands took what was left. "You sure you're up for this?" he asked. I was. Or I would be. I took the late bus home. Sometimes the driver didn't speak. I liked that. The apron they gave me was one size too big. I stitched the waist tighter at night by lamplight, hiding the needle under my Bible when Kendra walked past. She once joked that my clothes made me look like the school custodian. I didn't correct her. Travis didn't say anything about my job until he saw a pay stub on the table. He tapped it once, didn't look up. You don't have to do this, you know. We're managing. I nodded. I didn't mention the overdraft notices, the subscription charges, the bounced daycare payment that came in my name. I just made sure dinner was on the table and the dishes were rinsed before midnight. Eventually, the background noise of who I was stopped reaching them. I used to hum while folding laundry. I stopped humming. I used to place notes in the lunch boxes. I stopped packing lunch. One morning, I turned off the radio before the weather report. The silence didn't feel polite anymore. It felt expected. There was a time I wanted to show them the note Russell had left in the back of my recipe journal. A small line in shaky pen. You make a house better than anyone I've ever met. I almost read it aloud once when Kendra complained about the burnt edges of my biscuits, but I didn't. I tucked it deeper into the pages and brought out store-bought instead. The coat I wear to work has a patch on the left elbow. I stitched it with gray thread, slightly off from the original color. No one commented on it. Maybe they thought I didn't notice. Maybe they just stopped seeing me altogether. The uniform shirt hangs behind the door now. I press it every Sunday, even when I don't have a shift. I straighten the name tag, Mildred. Not Mom, not Grandma, not Ma, just me. The collar is fraying at the seam. I haven't replaced it. Every fold in the fabric carries something I never said. I never fought them. I only tried to fit. Some things leave you quietly, like the smell of cinnamon that disappears from a room even though you never opened a window. I only meant to find a cookbook. The one with the blue spine, the corner torn where my mother wrote a pie recipe in pencil and smudged the crust notes with butter. It used to sit near the back shelf behind the extra paper towels. The garage had become a holding place for things I wasn't ready to throw out but no longer needed to reach. The third box down was labeled Crafts plus Misc. The handwriting was mine, but I barely recognized it. Softer, smaller. The kind of handwriting you use when you believe someone will read it. Inside, I found a rubber-banded bundle of greeting cards. Most of them had come from the dollar store. The corners creased, the envelopes reused with stickers to keep them closed. I hadn't opened this box in years. Still, I sat down on the overturned crate and began leafing through them one at a time. The Christmas card on top was last year's. Gold foil snowflakes, generic font. To Ellie and Tyler, Merry Christmas, love, Mom and Dad. Nothing about me. I had bought Ellie a second-hand pink bicycle that year, polished the handlebars, tied a red ribbon around the bell. I remember how she tore the paper, looked past me, and ran to show Travis. He said, "We'll take it for a spin later," then turned back to the casserole. Not a thank you. Not even eye contact. Underneath the card was a folded art project crayon on construction paper. Ellie's drawing of her family, 4 stick figures. Dad, Mom herself, and a baby in a stroller. She'd drawn a sun in the top corner, a house with smoke curling from the chimney, a yellow dog I didn't recognize. No fifth person. No gray-haired woman sitting in the rocker like I used to. No mention of me. The page had a gold star in the corner. I flipped through the rest quickly. Birthday cards for Tyler. Invitations to school plays. I didn't know had happened, a wedding photo of Kayla Kendra's sister, stuck between pages of a folded program. Her name was written in cursive, along the top, Best Aunt Ever, in Ellie's messy marker script. I remembered the day Ellie wore the dress Kayla bought her. She spun twice in the hallway, holding the skirt out at the sides like a curtain. "Dia Kayla got it for me," she said. "Isn't it pretty?" Kendra leaned back on the couch. At least someone knows how to shop for a child. Travis laughed. That girl's got taste. Kayla, not Ellie. I never brought up the dress I gave her the month before. It was cotton with a scalloped collar, the kind Sharon used to say, looked storybook. I found it at a thrift shop, hand-washed it sewed on a new button. Ellie held it up and said it looked itchy. It stayed folded in her drawer until it disappeared. The top flap of the box had started to peel. I smoothed it down with my palm and found tucked underneath a yellowing clipping from the Maple Hill Register. My short column about quiet strength, printed when I was 40. Just one paragraph buried in the back, but I had mailed it to my sister and kept the original. When I brought the paper home that night, Travis was 15. He was heating a frozen pizza in the oven. "Do we have chicken instead?" he asked, barely looking up. "No," I answered, holding out the paper. "I wrote something. It got printed." He pulled a plate from the cabinet. "Can I eat in the living room?" He didn't take the paper. I pinned it to the fridge myself. It stayed there until one of his friends drew a mustache on the photo next to it. After that, I folded it and tucked it into this box. It had been a small joy, not flashy, not loud, just mine. I rested the lid back over the card slowly, the way you cover something fragile, without wanting to admit it's already broken. There was no anger in the motion, just quiet, like closing the door to a room no one enters anymore. I stood up and reached for the old quilt to drape over the pile, the same one that used to sit on Sharon's recliner. She was the only one who ever said, "You live like you're invisible, but I always see you." She died 3 winters ago. A sudden cough, a quiet decline. I still hadn't gotten rid of her scarf, the one she wore to every book club meeting, even after summer came. It hung near the door now, next to coats no one wore anymore. I touched the edge of it, coarse from wear, warm from memory. I folded the quilt over the box, patting it down, as if sealing a letter that would never be read. There was nothing in that pile that could be thrown out, but nothing anyone would ask for either. I knew every line in those cards, every drawing, every clipped edge. What was missing wasn't the ink or paper. It was the glance that should have followed. The pause. The acknowledgement. I wasn't angry with them. I just don't think they ever really looked. I don't know when I stopped moving with sound. Even the door clicks quieter when I come in now, the hinges long since oiled. My steps fall on the rug just enough not to carry. I know where not to stand to avoid the creak near the hallway vent. I suppose you learn when your presence is something people need to recover from. The smell hit first. Tomato sauce, cheap pepperoni, warm crust. Take out again. A stacked box sat half open on the table edges, already curling. A greasy paper plate balanced on top of the electric bill I'd left out this morning. His foot tapped the table leg in rhythm with the canned laughter on the screen. She barely shifted when I walked in, legs crossed neatly, one perfectly manicured hand on the remote. The TV buzzed. Nobody paused it. I stepped over the full garbage bag by the counter. I'd tied it before I left. No one had taken it out. The bunched top looked like a swollen throat. "There's still a clog in the sink," I murmured, eyes on the drain. This morning it was backing up, just wondering if anyone... She didn't look away from the screen. "It's late," came her voice, clipped and airy. "Kids are down, and that uniform stinks, Mildred. Seriously, it's God, it turns my stomach." She waved a hand in the air like swatting smoke. His voice followed, chewing still. "Yeah, you coming in this late all the time. It's kind of disruptive. This isn't the projects, you know. We got standards." I didn't answer. My hand still held the brown paper sack from work. Inside, a boxed portion nobody claimed. 3 wings and a small slaw. I'd scribbled, "Don't toss on the lid," though I knew no one else would have eaten it anyway. The light from the kitchen hit my shirt sleeve splotches of fryer oil shaped like a map I never wanted to visit again. My neck still itched from the collar where flour stuck, dried to a crust. Their voices drifted back toward the show. I stood there long enough to feel the plastic container in my hand grow warmer than my skin. Long enough to hear one of them laugh. Last night, someone returned a 10-piece order because the wings were overcooked. I boxed them instead of tossing them, ate 3 in the back pantry. Sat on a sack of cornmeal, my legs numb after the rush. Never told anyone. There wasn't really anyone to tell. This morning before I left, I stripped Tyler's sheets. The smell had clung to the mattress cover. I washed it with vinegar and warm water, hung it in the garage. No one asked why I came home smelling like laundry soap. No one noticed the detergent level drop. Now they were eating pizza over a bill I still paid. I made my way toward the garage without touching a single doorknob. The washing basin there was shallow and cracked, but it worked. The bulb flickered overhead. I placed the uniform inside, poured a line of detergent down the middle. The cold water made my knuckles sting. My wrists had swollen again, too many back-to-back shifts. I scrubbed, then stopped. The silence in there felt sharper than their words. I leaned forward, hands buried in fabric, and stared at the cracked rim of the bucket. For a second, I pictured the photo on the hallway wall, all 4 of them smiling in matching outfits. My name wasn't on the frame. It was a gift from her sister. I remembered because I had to take the picture. Travis had said, "You're better behind the camera anyway, Mom." No one had objected. Sometimes I imagined cutting myself into that photo, pasting a sliver of my shoulder into the corner. Not the whole face, just enough to prove I'd been standing there. But they didn't want that. The image had to be clean. Pretty. The water turned murky in the basin. I scrubbed again, though the stain had already faded. From the far end of the garage, the dryer buzzed, once, then fell quiet. I didn't move to check it. Just stood there, sleeves rolled up, the tips of my fingers turning red. The wet shirt sagged in my grip, threads unraveling at the cuff. I traced one loose stitch with my thumb. No footsteps behind me, no voice calling to say, "Come sit, we saved you a slice." They never saved me anything. The calendar above the utility shelf still read March. Tyler had drawn a star on the 5th. I didn't know why. I hadn't been told. I reached for the towel I kept in a plastic bag under the sink. Faded from overuse, but soft. It smelled faintly of lemon. Sharon gave it to me after she moved out. In case you ever need to dry your eyes without a fuss, she'd laughed. It hadn't seemed like much then. I didn't use it now. I hung the shirt on the clothesline strung across the back wall. It drooped like a flag of a country no one wanted to claim. I didn't sit. Didn't cry. Didn't re-enter the house for another hour. The only sound was the slow drip from the faucet. And somewhere in the quiet, I thought, I'm not the subject of the photo on the wall. I'm the shadow behind it. And they prefer it that way. It didn't feel like withholding, it felt like breathing differently. The mug left a faint ring on the table, lighter than the ones before it. I hadn't warmed the tea again. It sat untouched beside a spoon I didn't need. The lemon wedge had dried at the edges, curling like something trying to turn away. I didn't move toward the stove. No skillet, no eggs, no pancake batter mix, shaken in its faded plastic bottle. The recipe card Ellie had decorated with stickers months ago stayed pinned on the fridge corners, soft and lifting. I let it be. When she padded in, wearing the socks I'd darned, she looked toward the counter, then back at me. "Are we not doing pancakes today?" I didn't unfold the napkin, just sipped quietly. Later, when Tyler asked for oat milk, not the regular kind, I opened the fridge, placed the carton in front of him, then turned away before he could begin another sentence. He didn't push. They don't when they feel something is tilted. The call to Raymond took less than 3 minutes. If I'm the only name on the deed, what are my legal rights in terms of occupants? He asked questions. I answered carefully. I used my maiden name, he'd know it from the paperwork. He asked if I wanted to schedule something formal. I told him I'd come Saturday. The silence in the room afterward wasn't uncomfortable, just wide. I opened the cabinet where we kept all the documents. We didn't want to think about tax folders, warranties for appliances that no longer worked, a funeral plan we never used. My name stood alone on every line that mattered. Mortgage, utilities, insurance, property taxes. Each envelope, each printout held proof that I was more than what they believed I had become. I laid them out on the kitchen table in careful rows, then stacked them again. I didn't announce what I was doing. I didn't feel the need to explain. At noon, Ellie came in from school, tossed her backpack near the door. "Can we make cherry pie tonight?" "Not tonight," I said without raising my voice. "Tonight, I'm resting." She blinked. Not from upset, just from surprise. I had never not said yes before. That night, I didn't fold the laundry. The dry clothes sat in the basket by the stairs, creased and warm. The purple sweatshirt she liked to wear after dinner stayed at the bottom. No one thanked me for folding. No one asked why it stopped. I started moving things in quiet increments. A copy of the deed into my purse, my own birth certificate from the plastic folder under the bed. I bought a new lockbox, put it under my bed, then moved it again. The old one was still behind Travis's toolbox in the garage, dusty and forgotten. There was no confrontation, no loud voice or clatter of dishes. I didn't let them have the theater of indignation. What I took back, I took in stillness. One evening as I set the kettle on for myself, I heard Kendra in the hallway. She's been acting off, like distant. "Do you think she's losing it?" "No," Travis murmured. "She's probably just tired. She's always tired." They didn't say it to me. Of course not. The next morning, the newspaper stayed folded on the porch. I let it sit there until it curled at the corners. I watched Travis glance at it before getting into his car, then leave it behind. I picked it up after dark. The ink had bled from dew. I didn't refill the snack containers. I didn't empty the dishwasher. No one thanked me when I did those things, and no one noticed when I didn't. On Thursday, I found Tyler's backpack, unzipped, the contents spilling onto the hallway rug. I stepped over it. I didn't reach down. That evening, Ellie left her math worksheet on the table. Usually, I'd correct it in pencil before dinner, circling the miscalculations with a quiet star. She came to me after brushing her teeth. "You forgot," she whispered. I handed her the worksheet without comment. "It's okay. I'll ask Dad." I nodded. I didn't correct her assumption that I forgot. I remembered everything. That night, I unfolded the old futon mattress in the storage room, sat on its edge. I had bought it years ago for guests who never came. It creaked beneath me now. The bedspread smelled faintly of cedar. One of the corners was torn threadbare from too much folding. I smoothed it out anyway. Above the futon, a shelf lined with dusty photo albums. I pulled one down, opened it. There was a picture from a beach trip we'd taken years ago. Travis still had braces. My husband was still alive. I wore a sun hat with a ribbon. Ellie's hands clutched it now, always pulling it off to play with. In the photo, we all faced the camera, but my eyes looked off to the side, towards something that wasn't captured. Next to that photo was a smaller one, just the two of us back when he still called me Mom instead of she. His hand was on my shoulder, not quite touching, but resting in the space where connection used to live. I touched the glass frame, traced the edge of the image. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. Instead, I reached behind the headboard, pulled out the small lockbox, and placed the photograph inside. Then shut the lid. In the morning, I would put it somewhere safe. But for now, I sat on the edge of the bed, both feet flat on the floor, and looked at the quiet space around me. They weren't cruel people, I thought, just blind in ways I'd trained them to be. It took years to teach them that my silence meant service, that my giving meant absence, that my presence was just the background hum of convenience. Now I would unteach it all, not through speeches, not through slammed doors, just space. I looked down at my hands, wrinkled dry, the veins like delicate branches. I had used these hands to lift, to hold, to clean, to cook, to fix. Now I let them rest on my knees. No tray to carry, no towel to fold, no note to leave on the fridge. And somewhere behind the quiet breath I didn't release, a thought came sharp and clean. I used to swallow my voice. Now I'm swallowing back the need to kneel. I didn't know a room could forget me so quickly. The mattress in the master bedroom had a slight dip in the center, the kind that forms after years of not turning it. I ran my fingers across the quilted top, tracing the shape of someone else's comfort. Travis and Kendra had taken this space over when the boys were little. Said it made sense. Said the kids needed to be close to their parents. I said nothing then. Now I moved my bed frame back in. Not the metal cot I'd been folding away each morning, but the one with the carved wood headboard my husband's initials still faintly etched in the corner, where he used to joke he'd brand his space like a rancher. The room had been rearranged so many times, but the original placement came back to me easily. I didn't ask permission. I didn't knock. In the closet, I found one of my old tablecloths, crumpled under a stack of forgotten suitcases. I unfolded it. A faint coffee stain spread across the corner like a bruise. I pressed it out with the heel of my hand before folding it neatly and putting it back in my drawer. The shelves still held remnants of them, children's books, mismatched socks, a bottle of dry shampoo. I boxed it all in silence. Wrote no labels. I opened the hall closet and pulled down the linens that still smelled like lemon detergent. My mother's embroidered towel sat between two faded pillowcases. The stitching on it had loosened, but the initials remained HG. Hers, not mine. I smoothed the corners with my palm. Then I went to work on the rest. The Wi-Fi went dark first. The blinking router light went steady, then dead. I unplugged it, slid it into the kitchen drawer. They wouldn't know until the next time they needed it. Kendra had my payment password saved to her browser auto payments for groceries, streaming services, and a subscription box I never used. I changed every password. Clicked the little lock icon beside each one. Nothing flashy. No warnings. I walked into the utility closet and opened the breaker box. A small silver key still hung from the hook. I turned it slowly and shut the panel. The feeling was not control, just return. Bank accounts came next. I opened my own separated from the one we all used, canceled the additional cards tied to my name. I remembered Kendra once called mine just the mother account said it like it was a title of nostalgia. The teller offered me a new debit card. I chose one without a design. Plain blue. Plastic smelled clean, unused. On the first night in my reclaimed room, I laid down facing the ceiling fan. It didn't spin. I hadn't turned it on. I wanted to listen to the silence to see if it had changed since I last slept here. It had. No toddler footsteps above. No late-night TV hum. No faint complaints from the hallway about the thermostat being too low again. I pulled the blanket over my shoulder and closed my eyes. It wasn't sleep that came first. It was the absence of needing to pretend I didn't exist. In the morning, I made breakfast for one. Steel-cut oats, slow cooked. I sliced an apple without rushing, arranged the slices like spokes on a wheel, then poured chamomile tea into a porcelain cup with a small chip at the rim. I turned the chip away from my lips. Habit. I sat at the small table by the window. The table still bore a faint mark where Travis once dropped a soldering iron. I let my spoon rest beside the bowl longer than usual. I wasn't waiting on anyone. When I opened the window, the scent of roses carried in softly, not the overgrown kind they'd let tangle near the gate. My roses, the yellow climbing ones I planted when the house was new, and I still believed each bloom was a kind of promise. A breeze lifted the edge of a curtain just enough to brush the rim of the sugar jar. I remembered that jar once held cough drops back when Travis was little and afraid of doctors. He used to sneak them, not knowing I always noticed. Now I didn't need to notice. I just observed. Ellie passed by the door, once peering inside. "Are you eating alone now?" I didn't answer her directly. "There's oatmeal left in the pot." She didn't come in. In the afternoon, I washed the wooden dining table with orange oil. The scent lingered on my fingers. I didn't use gloves. I wanted to feel the grain under my palms. The rag I used was one my mother embroidered decades ago, the one that had always been too nice for scrubbing yet too thin for display. The stitches had faded from red to rose, almost pink now. She used to say that cloth remembers every hand that touches it. When I wiped the last corner, I folded the cloth into a small square and placed it inside the drawer where I used to keep birthday candles. Someone knocked on my bedroom door later that evening. I didn't answer. Let them knock again. Then not at all. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the framed photograph on the dresser. My wedding picture. The corner had a crack in the glass just barely visible when the light hit it right. We'd been so young then, he with his too wide tie-me in borrowed heels. I touched the frame without lifting it. No music played, no buzz of texts. I had turned off notifications. A voicemail blinked, but I let it sit unread. In the hallway, I heard Travis speak low. "She's really doing all this just to prove a point," Kendra's voice brittle. "She's being selfish or delusional." He didn't defend me. They spoke as if I wasn't real, just a memory clinging to property lines. I closed the door, not fast, just enough for it to click. I picked up the scarf I used to wear to church, laid it across the dresser. Ran my hand along its lace trim. A snag caught at my knuckle. The house didn't feel bigger with space. It just felt honest. That night, I didn't fold anyone's clothes. I didn't check if the front porch light was off. I left the window cracked. The wind knew what to do. My hands, still slightly damp from citrus oil, rested on my lap. The quilt didn't need smoothing. The room didn't need explaining. And somewhere in that stillness, a thought settled, like a soft weight. I hadn't grown old. I had just finally been born. Some people only look at you when you stop giving. The envelope was thick and cream-colored. My lawyer, Raymond Doyle, preferred paper over email, said people take it more seriously. I had told him to make it simple, clear, dates, no sentimental language. It wasn't punishment, just clarity. Travis received it on a Tuesday afternoon. He called before sunset. The phone rang longer than it used to. "You're really doing this. You're putting us out." I had folded towels that morning. They were warm from the dryer and smelled faintly of lavender. I let them sit in the basket beside the phone while I stood there listening to my own voice reply, "This is a legal notice. I've given 8 years." He didn't speak again after that. Just the line going quiet like a screen door left open in the wind. Kendra didn't call, she posted. A mother's title doesn't mean much if she forgets what family is. The caption had no names, but the meaning wasn't hidden. 3 people shared it. One neighbor commented with a praying hands emoji. Another wrote, "So sorry you're going through this. Betty Lynn Foster." Sent me a text an hour later. "Hope everything's all right over there. Let me know if you need anything. Or if there's something you'd like to explain." I didn't reply. 2 days later, Travis showed up without notice. I was wiping down the kitchen counter with vinegar and lemon peel. He stood just inside the threshold, not removing his shoes, not asking to sit. I just need a little more time, 1 more month. I've got 2 interviews lined up. He didn't look at me when he said it. His eyes fixed on the floor tiles, like something might rise up to help him. I've already arranged the date, I said. He let out a breath like someone holding back a curse. From behind him, Kendra appeared in the doorway. She wore a fitted blazer, the kind she'd once told me made her feel like someone in control. Her voice was flat. Think about what the neighbors will say when they see your son carrying boxes out of the house. People remember those things, you know. I glanced at the hallway mirror. The frame had a hairline crack near the top right corner. It hadn't been there last week. Neither of them mentioned Lissy, or the meals I used to wrap and leave on the stove when they got home late, or the night Travis had the flu and I slept sitting up beside him changing towels every 2 hours. That was long before the silence began. I turned off the porch light that evening, just out of habit. Utilities were the first to go. I removed their names from the online dashboard. The power bill dropped by half. I canceled the shared grocery membership, reset the smart locks, deleted their biometric access. One device blinked red for a second, then gray. No drama. Their mail still came addressed to this house. I gathered it into a neat stack and placed it in a manila folder labeled Forward. In the main hallway, I lifted down the canvas that once held a family photo. The hook behind it had rusted slightly, left a crescent moon on the paint. I wiped it with a soft cloth. Slow, even strokes. Then I hung Russell's portrait, his formal Navy photo. Younger than Travis ever was, but somehow heavier in the eyes. Lissy called me on a Thursday. She didn't mention the situation directly. Her voice was unsure but not avoidant. My lease is up in May. I need a place to study just for a bit. I didn't ask why she called me instead of them. You can take the guest room. I heard her exhale like she'd been holding something between her ribs. I'll help with groceries. You don't have to, I said, then let the line go quiet. The guest room had become a kind of storage area over the years. Boxes of old curtains, worn puzzle sets, half-used paint cans. I cleared the bed first, folded the Afghan Russell's mother had crocheted, set it at the foot like she used to. Nothing else was needed. The night before the deadline, I left a note on the kitchen table. Not a letter. Just a printed checklist, keys, mailbox pass, garage opener, no signature. They moved out the next day. No slamming of doors, no goodbyes, no last-minute guilt. The moving van was smaller than I expected. They didn't take the bunk beds. They didn't take the patio set I bought in '92. They took a microwave, a mattress, 2 suitcases, and a box of framed pictures. I stood by the side window and watched Travis back the van down the drive. Kendra followed in her car. She didn't glance up. By afternoon, the silence had changed again. It wasn't a silence made by absence, but one that had space in it. Breathable. The boxes they left behind, I moved to the attic. Nothing marked fragile. That evening I sat on the front steps. The wood had begun to splinter again. I ran my hand across one of the boards, felt where paint had chipped. In the flower bed, one of the daffodils had come in early. I didn't call anyone. No one waved as they passed. But the house looked smaller now. Not shrinking, just returned to scale. I remembered how when Travis was little, he used to run down that same walkway with untied shoes, shouting that he could see the school bus before it turned the corner. He never looked back. In the quiet, I pressed my thumb against my palm, feeling the faint ridge of my wedding ring's imprint. I'd removed it weeks ago, but the shape lingered. The mailbox held nothing new. Just a flyer for a storage facility, a coupon for frozen meals. I took the envelope from the bottom, Raymond's handwriting, neat and serifed. Inside was a note. Let me know if they cause trouble. I folded it once, then again, and placed it in the drawer with the manuals and extra light bulbs. I didn't feel righteous. I didn't feel cruel. I stood by the doorframe a moment longer, brushing lint from my sleeve. No one had claimed this place for a long time. Now I had. And as the screen door clicked shut behind me, only one thought stayed. I used to be their resting place. Now I am my own beginning. Some kinds of peace don't make noise when they arrive. Melissa brought 3 boxes of books and a dented teapot wrapped in an old flannel shirt. She placed them down carefully, as if the floor might not agree with her weight. I recognized the teapot. It used to sit on Sharon's stove, always full, always forgotten. Lissy came 2 days earlier, carrying a single suitcase and a binder with pastel dividers. She didn't ask for anything. She only said, "I won't take up space. I just need a place where things feel warmer." I didn't ask what she meant. She didn't leave dishes in the sink. She folded the throw blanket after every use. Her charger never lay tangled across the floor. I started buying 2 kinds of tea instead of one. For the first time in a long while, someone else reached for the grocery bill. I moved slower these days. Not because of age, because there was no one rushing behind me anymore. The fridge stayed full. The house stayed clean. No shoes in the hallway. No arguments over thermostat settings. I found an old knitting bag I'd stashed years ago, the yarn still in its original wrapper. I began again without thinking, one loop, one line, without apology. The quiet had changed tone. It wasn't emptiness, just absence of urgency. We didn't talk much, Lissy and I, not because there was nothing to say, but because nothing needed proving. She studied in the sunroom. I planted rosemary near the porch. In the evenings, we cooked what we had. No one asked what was for dinner. We ate what was warm. We cleaned what we used. When a light bulb flickered, she found the step stool and fixed it without being asked. One evening, I noticed she'd placed a coaster under her water glass, not out of fear, out of care. I had been different too. I didn't check my phone as often. I stopped keeping receipts in my purse. I walked without pressing my shoulders in. Then came the knock. It wasn't loud, just steady. I opened the door to find Travis standing on the front step. No suitcase, no pleading expression, just a thin envelope in his hand. "I'm not here to ask for anything," he said, eyes still low. I didn't know. Not until lately. I held the doorframe. The wood was cool under my fingers. He held out the envelope. Inside, a note written by hand in stiff block letters. No long paragraphs, just, "You did more than I ever saw. I should have seen it sooner." Behind him, Kendra stepped from the car. She didn't speak. She had Ellie on one hip, Tyler beside her dragging a blanket along the pavement. She didn't make eye contact. She just nodded toward the porch swing. They sat. All of them, like visitors in a place that no longer remembered them as owners. Ellie looked different, less polished. Her shoes were too small, but clean. She reached into a paper bag and pulled out something folded, a drawing. She handed it over without a word. 4 stick figures holding hands. One labeled me, another mom, another dad, and one in the middle, grandma. The figure wore a triangle dress and had gray lines for hair, no crown, no tears. Ellie looked up. "Did you feel bad a lot?" Back then, I didn't answer, just smiled, not with lips, just with stillness. Kendra didn't apologize, but she didn't stop her daughter from leaning into my side. Tyler, the younger one, held a toy car in his palm. He kept tracing the porch boards with it. Not racing, just moving it slowly like he was learning the grooves. They didn't ask to stay. 3 days later, I heard through Melissa that they'd rented a 2-room unit behind the gas station. Small kitchen window, AC, no yard. Travis had found work at a local repair garage. Kendra took morning shifts at the corner grocery. Their clothes looked lived in. Nothing sparkled. Ellie started sending me little drawings through Lissy stickers added sometimes hearts in the corners. Once, a picture of a tree with one person sitting under it and another walking back toward it. No explanation. On a Wednesday, Travis came by again, just to drop off a box of my mixing bowls. He said nothing as he placed it on the stoop, but he wiped the rim of the top one before leaving. Later that week, I heard Lissy on the phone. Soft voice, firm tone. No, grandma's not lonely. She just finally has room to breathe. Then laughter, not loud, just steady. Ellie came by on a Saturday. She'd started calling me grandma again, no correction from Kendra. She helped Melissa fold towels that evening. I watched from the porch. The towels were still warm from the dryer folded in precise thirds. Ellie tried to mimic the shape, but made hers lopsided. Melissa didn't fix it. Just smiled and placed it on the pile like it belonged. The rosemary by the porch had bloomed. I picked a sprig and held it to my nose. It smelled sharp but clean. I didn't think about the house as shelter anymore. It was a filter. What stayed, stayed because it chose to be here. They never asked to return. They just came by with offerings, small ones. A screwdriver borrowed and returned. A lawn rake left leaning on the fence. A note in the mailbox with no envelope. The words, "We're trying." I didn't open the door that day. I didn't wave either. I didn't need to. They weren't mine to fix. They were just people who had finally seen the shape of what they'd broken. And I, sitting with a cup of mint tea and a page half read in my lap, thought only this: I never asked anyone to come back. But if they do, they must carry something worth keeping. There's a kind of love that doesn't stretch its ends where it needs to. I sat across from Raymond without small talk. His office hadn't changed in a decade, same scuffed armrest on the left chair, same faint scratch on his nameplate. He clicked his pen once, then waited. I handed him the folder I'd marked with a paperclip, not a post-it. I didn't want notes. Just action. He glanced through the new clause and looked up. 5 years of financial independence, he read before the inheritance becomes accessible. No questions followed. Only, "You're sure?" I nodded once. I didn't explain it to him. I didn't owe the air inside that room a reason. I wasn't rewriting anything out of bitterness. I was drawing a boundary around what I had rebuilt, line by line, meal by meal, month by month. Some things didn't need to be torn down, just kept clean. When I got home, the old photo frame still hung by the hallway, the one from the Christmas when the boys were small and Kendra still wore corduroy. I lifted it gently from its nail, wrapped it in brown paper, and slid it into the storage box, marked Myas. In its place, I hung a newer print. Lissy and I at the table. Ellie leaning over a plate of strawberries. Tyler mid-laugh, a spoon in his hand. No one was looking at the camera. That's why I kept it. Later, I opened the drawer with the duplicate keys. I found the silver one, the one with the worn rubber grip Travis used to keep on his carabiner. I placed it in a plain white envelope, no card. Just the key and a folded receipt from the locksmith who had recoded the locks last winter. I slipped it into his mailbox without knocking. When Travis showed up 3 days later, he held the envelope like it might vanish. I watched him from the doorway. "I can mow the lawn this weekend," he said, "and we'll cover utilities this time." No smile. No push for approval. That night, a new desk arrived in a flat box. Ellie said she was going to assemble it with her dad, just the two of us. The instruction booklet ended up spread across the floor like a map. Pieces were missing by morning, but the desk stood wobbly, but honest. A few days after Kendra posted a photo of the dining table on her social media, Ellie, coloring beside a teacup, captioned "Grateful for second chances" I didn't know I needed. The comments were polite, most from coworkers, one from her sister. No mention of me, but I saw the effort. Not for show, just effort. I didn't repost it. The next morning, Kendra knocked once on the back screen door holding a brown grocery bag. She placed it on the counter without a word and started unpacking. Apple's coffee and a small basil plant in a dented tin can. I watched her place the basil on the windowsill. No ceremony. "You grow things better than I do," she murmured, not looking back. I didn't answer. I just watered the plant the next day and again 2 days later. Then came the note. A plain envelope, not sealed. I found it tucked under the paperweight shaped like a river stone on my desk. The handwriting was Travis's, blocky and uneven. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking if one day you could look at me and see someone who finally stood up straight. I know I don't deserve a second version of you, but I've built the first version of myself." I read it once, then again. I folded the note carefully and placed it in the drawer beside the updated will. The drawer clicked shut the same way it always had, soft but final. Lissy brought home a bunch of daisies from the flower shop around the corner. She arranged them in the blue vase I used to keep empty, the one with the tiny chip near the rim that no one ever noticed. We didn't say much that evening. She made soup. I sliced bread. Ellie read aloud from a book about stars, her finger tracing each line like it might escape if she didn't hold it down. When it was quiet, Lissy reached across the table and adjusted the corner of the tablecloth. "You okay?" she asked, eyes low. I tapped the envelope drawer once with my knuckle. "It's all written down now, clear." She didn't nod, didn't push. Outside, the porch light flickered. Travis would replace the bulb. Kendra would make sure the dishes were dry before stacking. Ellie would return my library books without bending the corners. They were careful now, not because I asked, because I had stopped doing the asking. For a long time, I had lived as if everything I gave was part of a debt I couldn't name. But debts are not inherited, not when you're the one who paid them off quietly. I had returned my own key, taken back the silence, rewritten what belonged to me without crossing out their names. Now I owned what remained, and finally I was no longer the shadow in the room. I was the one holding the light. Sometimes I wake before the sun, not because I have to, but because I can. The floor was cool under my feet. I didn't rush to check the time. No voice in the hallway asking if I'd seen the lunchboxes. No footsteps pacing near the bathroom, waiting for me to move. I wrapped the old shawl around my shoulders, the one with the tiny snag near the hem, where it caught on the mailbox years ago. I didn't fix it. Some things don't need mending to keep their warmth. The kettle clicked on soft as a sigh. I chose the mint blend from the tin marked with roses. The cup I used had a faint hairline crack along the handle, one Kendra once called tacky. It still held heat just fine. Claire's books were spread across the table. A sticky note fluttered slightly where the draft slipped under the kitchen door. "Miss Millie, please don't clean this yet. I'll organize it after class. Thanks for yesterday." She used a heart instead of a period. I didn't move the books. I only folded the dish towel a little neater and left her mug where it was. The windows hadn't fogged yet. I unlocked them gently and let in the morning. Outside, the hum of the mower drifted up from the front yard. Travis wore a faded navy shirt and a ball cap, pushing slowly in straight lines. Tyler, small hands gripping the wheelbarrow, followed behind without being asked. On the steps, Ellie colored something green with fierce focus. No one called my name. No one glanced toward the kitchen expecting breakfast. Travis looked up briefly when I opened the screen. His nod wasn't stiff or distant. "Morning, Mom." Kendra stepped out from the car, paper bags cradled in her arms. She placed them beside the door, brushed her sleeve off. "Got that new citrus tea. Thought you might like it." She didn't wait for me to answer, didn't linger for thanks. Claire wandered in with her sweater bunched at the sleeves, holding a pale yellow envelope. The internship came through. "Mercy General, starts next month." Her fingers brushed mine when she handed it over. A quiet tremble ran through the corner of her mouth. Pride, maybe, or uncertainty. I didn't ask. "I'll be moving closer to the hospital," she said, "but I'll come by on Sundays, if that's all right." I looked at her, the girl who once carried her world in a pink backpack, now unfolding into something steady. "This door's open," I told her, "but it doesn't have to stay open all the time. Go live your life, Claire. No tears, no clinging, just the warmth of her head against my shoulder before she left the room." Later that day, I took out the cloth napkins tucked in the linen drawer, the ones with the hand-stitched violets edges slightly curled. My mother had pressed them for holidays, but I never found the occasion right. Today felt like the kind of quiet celebration she would have understood. One by one, I smoothed them over the table. They held the shape of age of meals not yet eaten, of hands that no longer hovered above them. I folded each corner with care. Not for guests. For myself. Near the sink, I paused with my hands resting on the counter. Russell's voice came back, not loud, just there in the back of my memory, like the rhythm of a lullaby long forgotten. "As long as the kitchen stays clean and the windows stay open, this house is yours." He had meant it literally, but now I heard something else. I turned my head slightly. The kitchen was clean, not spotless, just enough. The window was open breeze brushing past the curtains, and the old camellia outside had bloomed again, stubborn and pale against the rough bark. A stack of mail waited on the hall table. Utility bill, local circular, one envelope from the library. No urgent red stamps, no notices. Nobody needed a signature from me today. No one was watching for a mistake. I sat back at the table, resting my hands on the embroidered edge. There was no title attached to me in that moment. Not caregiver, not problem solver, not backbone. Just a woman with tea cooling beside her and linen under her fingers. Once, I thought I had to keep proving I belonged by staying needed, by making space for others, even if I disappeared in the process. That if I didn't serve, I'd stop mattering. But I was wrong. I don't need to be a perfect mother. I don't need to be a sacrificial grandmother. I don't need to be the spine holding up a house that never looked back at who held it. I just need to live. As myself. Mildred Whitlow. And from now on, that is enough.